Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl. Today with me, AJ. I'm a petrolhead and I love hot hatches. But if you're like me, you must have wondered what happens when everything is electric. Well, this might just be the answer. The Cupra Born, Volkswagen ID.3's sportier cousin, built on the same MEB platform. So, in today's episode, we're going to consider the things that makes a hot hatch special. It has to look good on the outside, has to feel special on the inside, must be reasonably practical, but then have performance, dynamic capability, and be engaging. Let's put it to the test. Compared to the ID.3, in my eyes, the Cupra Born looks significantly better. I do really like the copper accents, the tribal logo, and the shape of the LED lights, as well as the bumper overall, is definitely more athletic. I really love the detailing as well, like take a look at these small little triangles in the front of the headlamp cluster. The Cupra Born is 4.3 meters long, 1.8 meters wide, and depending on the specification, weighs roughly around 1,800 kilograms. You get 18-inch wheels as standard, but you can optionally get these 20-inch wheels that you see here, which of course have a very nice aerodynamic electric car design. As we move further down the side, well actually, the design line is quite simple. There is just the one which goes through the door handle line, but I love the kink in the lower part of the side skirt, which again makes this look a lot more athletic. Towards the rear, and you'll see this in the inside in a minute, there's this really nice checkered pattern with matte and gloss black, which really adds a nice contrast to this overall big sheet metal over here. If you look back here in the rear wheel, with the version that we have here, and we'll talk about the different versions available, you actually see that there is a drum brake and no disc brake. And that's because this is a rear motor, rear axle driven electric platform, and therefore this does a lot of recuperative braking and regenerative braking, and therefore this drum brake is sufficient. Overall, the Cupra Born is lower in suspension compared to the ID.3, and depending on the version, you can get also the dynamic chassis control, the DCC. The Born gives you an ultimatum: go electric or go home. Sorry for the really bad joke. But the rear design, I think, looks really nice. You have these angry eyes for the tail lamp design with this long horizontal LED strip, which gives you an extra sense of width for the car. Nice roof spoiler, a pretty small rear window, but we'll see how that translates to visibility when we're driving. Further down, we have the Cupra logo with that carbon fiber finish, and then the bumper itself is really cool. There's a diffuser-like design lower down. Of course, aerodynamics is very important to electric cars, and this definitely does make a difference. Do we have a Frunk? No, we don't. We have a lot of the different systems required. You also see the standard electric battery as well as the place to fill your windshield washer fluid. So the Cupra Born comes with 3 electric batteries options and 3 power outputs. You have a 45 kilowatt hour battery with 150 horsepower, and this is all net, by the way. There's a 58 kilowatt hour, which is the one you see here. You can have this with 204 horsepower, or option the performance pack, which gives you the e-boost up to 231 horsepower. There's also a 77 kilowatt hour extended range battery pack with 231 horsepower. They're all, of course, rear-wheel drive with a single permanent magnet motor connected with a single-speed transmission and an open differential. All the battery packs that come with the Cupra Born have fast charging capability, but it's that 77 kilowatt hour battery, which actually now, with a software upgrade, is even capable of using a 135 kilowatt supercharger. So you see the standard VW Group key with the Cupra logo in the back in this model. You have keyless entry, or you can just use the button here. The mirrors retract, and well, the door opens really nice and wide, large glass area, but as we know with the ID.3, it's a lot of hard plastics. However, because we understand they need to save money, that's just how it is. But I really appreciate that they've brought in those triangular elements that we saw on the outside into this texture here in this molded plastic. There's also ambient lighting on the top, Alcantara microfibre finish, soft touch material here. You have a dash of that copper accent and large door bins. But there's one thing that does annoy me. If you look at these window and mirror switches, you see only two. But the car has 4 windows. So you have to tap. And this is a touch-sensitive button. And then you can operate the front with this. And then if you want to operate the rear windows, you have to turn that on and then operate the rear. I don't know. How much money are you saving, Cupra, with not giving me 2 additional switches? Anyway, things get better as we look inside because we have that gorgeous Cupra steering wheel. We have that copper accent dash throughout the cabin. And again, more interesting materials as compared to its sibling. If we take a look at the seats, you also get these bucket seats as standard, and throughout the cabin, including the seats, they've used recycled waste plastic that they've collected from the ocean. So that's something I really like. It makes me feel better that not only am I driving an electric car, but I'm also using recycled plastic. These seats are electronically adjustable, and there's also a massage function on the top. Cupras, first of all, do always feel a bit more futuristic. They're kind of like an Alienware spaceship kind of a vibe. This is mellowed down significantly. But of course, that gorgeous textured steering wheel with the Cupra logo. This is not the top version with the performance pack, so we don't have the buttons for the drive mode selector in the Cupra mode. But these are things I don't like. These are just touch capacitive buttons, and they just get in the way. Like if you're driving and you're holding the steering wheel like this, you're constantly knocking these sides of the buttons. Another interesting part about the steering wheel column is, well, if you notice, of course you can retract it. It's adjustable for reach and rake, but the I would say the cockpit console, the instruments, move with the steering wheel column. And to me, this is actually a great idea because, and I'll show you in a minute, there's a really nice head-up display which has the augmented reality projection as well. So you're going to be looking at that. Gives you plenty of information. You have this right in your line of sight. This is an electric car. You don't need a big tacho. You don't need a big speedo. So this serves the purpose. But as you go to the side, and we'll come to this in a minute, things aren't as good as they seem. Let's talk a little bit about the materials. Nice materials on the top. So, you know, the doors were pretty hard and stiff, but these are getting nicer as we go further into the cabin. There's a nice dash of this dark silver color. And again, these triangle design elements are stamped into the plastic mold. So significantly better in my eyes than the ID3. So there is a couple options to slide and maximize some of the view that you have on the main the instrument console, but it's not much. But another interesting thing is if you look up here, this is how you actually put the car into drive. So you put your foot on the brake and then you go to drive, and then if you press it again, you go to the B, which is the has a lot more aggressive interference with the recuperation system. But there is one button, I counted, there's one button in the entire car, and that's the park button over here. And yeah, goodbye, it says goodbye. You also have actually a second button here for the start and stop. There's also a great head-up display which has a lot of useful information and augmented reality for the navigation. So definitely feels like you're driving something from the future, and definitely feels really special when you're sitting inside. So now we see the 12-inch touchscreen. This is bigger than the 10-inch you get in the ID3. But is it any better? Well, yes and no. So you do have larger icons, so that's nice, but it's still not the most responsive. See, I double tapped on the map, didn't even recognize it. Try again. It takes a minute. It doesn't really zoom and pan as quickly or as intuitively. And you do have smartphone connectivity with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but my biggest gripe with this are these sliders. First of all, I don't think that's a good idea. It's dangerous while driving. Secondly, none of these are backlit. So when you're driving at night, it's just one long panel, and it's hard to understand if you want to change the temperature. Where do you tap? Where do you touch? You might say that you get used to it over time, but I think it's just a missed opportunity, and it's just kind of not really taking into the user's point of view. We've been driving for about 175 kilometers today. We're averaging around 20 kilowatt hour for 100 kilometers. The range that is claimed for this 58 kilowatt hour battery is 420, somewhere over 400 kilometers. But at this rate, as you can see, it's significantly less. And we weren't really driving too enthusiastically. But You can optionally get the heat pump. You can try to keep your seat heater and your steering wheel heater off, be more gentle with the accelerator pedal, and you might see numbers around 18. And I think, well, in the real world, that's not too bad. There's also a 360 reversing camera, which gives you dynamic guidelines as well, and you can see the parking assist, the cross-traffic alert, the trailer assist, and so on right there. There's plenty of storage inside. Apart from the door bins, you have a pretty generous and damped glove box. This large central tunnel, which again has soft padding on it, so that's nice. Really cool copper finish, and a tambour door, which gives you 2 adaptive bottle holders, a large cubby up there. And then if we move further down, there's an inductive phone charger right here, and a huge cubby down there with 2 USB-C ports. Let's give it the good old shake test, shall we? Yeah, that's not the best, but still, I do appreciate the soft materials here, where your knees rest. So for a car of this segment, I think it's still better than the ID3. Large door again, and again, thanks to this EV platform, you can have a very big cabin, and this is giving you a lot more generous space on the inside. Getting in is not too bad, even though this is a little bit lower than the ID3. And again, thanks to this large opening, it's easy to get inside. This seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8", or about 173 centimeters, and as you can see, I have enough space to slide my feet under the front seat, even though it's at the lowest position. Plenty of knee room. There's this really nice panoramic roof, which does not open, unfortunately, but brings in a lot of light into an otherwise very black cabin. As we move to the middle, there is definitely space to seat a third passenger in moderate comfort for short journeys. You have ISOFIX points for child seats as well, and a center armrest with a couple cup holders. Then if we look towards the front here, there are no AC vents for the rear, but you do get a couple USB-C ports. So, for a starting price of around 37,000 euros for the basic version, this is reasonably affordable, reasonably practical. To lift the hatch, you tumble the logo, and take a look at the side here. It's like a cutout in the stamped sheet metal for that rear light. Pretty cool. Pretty cavernous trunk, if you ask me. Plenty of space to load suitcases, for example. I can show you. Here's my standard issue cabin trolley bag. It fits vertically, and there's plenty of space for more. So airport trips, not a problem. In fact, I was chauffeured to the airport in an ID3 and it took all my luggage, no problem. The floor can also be lowered, as you can see, but right now we have the cables down there. And if you take a look at the seat, we have a 60-40 split folding rear seat with a ski hatch. We have another model here to show you today. This has a lighter gray color, but I think it helps that contrasting bumper stand out. But significant difference for this would be that this has the 77 kWh battery with the max output of 231 PS with that e-boost from the performance pack. If we come around to the side, another difference you notice are these wheels have a different design. They don't have that copper color, which to me I think is a bit looks better because it's a very unique color combination that Cupra has. Another difference would be that this is currently a 4-seater, so there's a big cubby hole right in the middle of the bench, which I guess you can place your iPad if you like. But the most important difference in the inside is here on the steering wheel, where you see the drive mode selector button, as well as a button to jump straight to the Cupra mode. So the Cupra Born definitely looks really cool on the outside. It makes you feel special when you're sitting inside. It's reasonably practical, so that's that first half of a hot hatch covered. But the real important bit that I'm interested in is what's the performance like, how is it dynamically, and is it engaging? So to do that, we found some beautiful mountain roads here near Garmisch in Germany. So let's go into the drive profile and select performance. Now the accelerator has a much sharper response, and there's actually even more regenerative braking to kind of mimic a sporty dynamic character of a standard IC engine with engine braking. So as soon as we get out of this little village, let's put our foot on down to the floor and see how it goes. Remember, this is rear-wheel drive, that center of gravity that's low down. It has progressive steering, and there you go. You put your foot down and you get that instant torque. And because that center of gravity is so low, it actually doesn't roll as much as you would expect for a car that's this tall. So definitely a plus point. It has an open differential, but it has, of course, an ESC system to help put the traction to the ground, or the power to the ground. And in this hill climb, the steering is also really nice and sharp. However, it's not very engaging. So the feedback from the steering wheel is so-so. The accelerator pedal, of course, doesn't give me much feedback. And the brake pedal, because when you first step on the brake, you're engaging the recuperative braking, you're not really feeling too much that's real friction. It's more synthetic. And finally, the biggest drawback that I see is that there is no sound. And the problem with this is you don't feel speed. The perception of speed is diminished to an extent when you don't hear the engine, you don't feel the vibrations on the steering wheel. And this kind of detracts from that engagement. And with electric cars, there's so much of scope to do something new. It's a blank canvas, it's a clean sheet of paper. So the design, of course, doesn't have the regular hindrances of, okay, where do I put the engine? Where do I put the fuel tank? No, you just have that skateboard and you can build whatever you like, as long as it meets these crash regulations. But same with sound. You can devise some kind of a soundscape. It doesn't have to sound like an engine at all, but can sound like a spaceship or, something totally new. And I think it's a missed opportunity that there is no sound. But on the whole, brake feel is not too bad once you're used to it. The visibility is pretty good too, even though this pillar is quite long. When you're going into corners, you have that quarter window. The suspension also, even without the DCC in this version, definitely helps keep the car planted. You don't feel the tires screaming, or you don't feel like you're losing traction. It's all about that acceleration, because top speed at the end of the day is also not really the forte of the Cupra Born. We're driving the 204 PS, so not even the performance pack, but to be honest, when you're driving on twisty roads like this, that instant torque is plenty. That max output doesn't really make such a big difference. It's less than 30 PS difference. So it's not really a big change. So I would say that this 204 PS version is plenty fast, plenty fun. And it's not a very large car, so the dimensions are also very reasonable, and that helps you place the car in these narrow roads much easier. Rear-wheel drive gives you that nice rotation, and because there's no big clunky transaxle in the front wheels, you have a much smaller turning circle, so you can take tighter turns with more confidence. The seats are also doing a pretty decent job of holding me in place. So overall, definitely feels like a hot hatch. Yes, you have to recalibrate your brain to perceive speed in a little bit of a different way. And I think, if you give a choice to the driver to be able to activate or deactivate some kind of a sound, I think it would be a complete package. So, if this is the future, sign me up. This is the top of the line version with the biggest battery pack and the full 231 horsepower output. This also gets some smaller additional features than the previous car that we were driving. So for example, because this has the performance pack and the full power output, we have the drive mode selector here on the steering wheel and a direct button to jump to Cupra mode. This also comes with the dynamic chassis control, the DCC, and it has the travel assist. There's some smaller differences as well. For example, this is at the moment only a 4-seater. And I can already tell you as we drive through this little town again, that the DCC in comfort mode is more comfortable than the standard sport suspension. So that for sure, I think, is a benefit of having this system. But another benefit of having this system is the improved dynamic capability. So we're coming out of the town. Let's push the Cupra button to jump to Cupra mode and floor it. whoa, this feels even sharper than the performance mode actually. So the power output itself might not be significantly different, and the capability of the motor as well might not be significantly different, but just the tuning when this Cupra mode is so much more aggressive. The steering weight is a little bit heavier, but still feedback isn't significantly different. This being the bigger battery pack, of course it weighs a little bit more, but to be honest, you don't feel that weight. And coming out of a corner with this rear wheel drive platform, putting your foot down really gives you a nice rotation, a nice push mid-corner. The DCC also does an even better job of keeping the car planted. I'm still missing that sound though, which I guess we'll have to see. Because of the aggressive regenerative braking, if you let go of the accelerator pedal, it's easier to make the car dive in even faster. Progressive steering again, the same as before. So ultimately, I think this definitely takes the Cupra Born to the most capable level. And if I'm honest, because this car is, well, supposedly a hot hatch, you would want to take it out of the town, come to some mountain roads to enjoy the drive, which means you need to be able to reach the mountains first. So this larger battery pack will afford you more range, and the added weight doesn't really make a big difference. It's not a significant hindrance in the dynamic capability of this car. So at the end of the day, if you can afford it, go the whole hog and get this top of the line, big battery and full power output version of the Cupra Born.